Hello and welcome to Mads Mikkelsen Week here at Brickwall Pictures. Throughout this week I'll be putting out reviews for 3 recent Mads Mikkelsen films, all Danish productions. One from Dogma 95 co-founder Thomas Vinterberg, who also made The Hunt with Mads Mikkelsen, which we reviewed recently right here on this channel. Look for a link to that in the description. And 2 from director Anders Thomas Jensen, who also directed Mads in Adam's Apples, which I reviewed a long time ago, almost 5 years ago at this point, meaning that review is not this same level of quality, but you can find that in the description too as well if you feel so inclined. Today I'm reviewing Druk, aka Another Round, and later on in the week I'll be reviewing Men and Chicken and Riders of Justice. So make sure you subscribe to Brickwall Pictures to see it all. There's also a playlist in the description that you can follow along with. So why have I decided to put this Mads Mikkelsen week together? Mads Mikkelsen is one of my favorite actors, but I've found that many American audiences, or maybe just English-speaking audiences in general, tend to undervalue Mads' talents as an actor. Even those who like him tend to hold this sort of reduced view of his thespian abilities. So you can consider this miniseries an American's introduction to Mads' Danish language films. Mads' best roles in the US tend to be villain parts, owing, I think, to some semi-subconscious ethnocentrism in Hollywood filmmaking that suggests that if someone has a foreign accent, then they must be evil. It's more rare than you might expect to find anyone who speaks English as a second language placed in the protagonist role of a major Hollywood film. The best you can hope for most of the time is a juicy villain or sidekick role. I'd like to see American screenwriters and studios get away from this narrow view of the world where anyone outside the country's borders must not be important or likable or interesting enough to follow as a protagonist. And while Mads is great at playing villains, back in his home country of Denmark, he frequently fills likable protagonist and supporting characters' shoes. A villain role like whatever his name was in Doctor Strange gives him nothing to work with. And even a non-villain role like his part in Rogue One is such a nothing character that it's hard to see the part as anything other than a waste of his immense talents. Now, to be clear, there's no blame on him for those unchallenging parts. Those are the roles that provide big enough paychecks and build enough cachet and box office appeal that he's able to go and be in smaller, more challenging films with less wide appeal back in Denmark without worrying about his star power back in Hollywood diminishing in the interim. Those high-profile roles also help to bring new audiences into foreign language films that otherwise might not receive much attention abroad. How many people first saw Mads Mikkelsen as the magnetic Bond villain Le Chiffre in Casino Royale, then were convinced to check out one of his more recent Danish language films because of his involvement? I've been glad to see Mads continually returning to Danish language productions with talented directors who give him material that pushes his abilities and allows him to explore different types of characters and show all that he can do. I first became a massive fan of Mads Mikkelsen through his work in The Hunt, which I saw back in 2012 when I was a freshman in high school. And it's still the film I would recommend the most for anyone looking to dive into Mads' Danish language work. But now let's look at one of Mads' recent Danish language films that at least somewhat succeeded in breaking out of its native country and finding significant audiences abroad. Today we're looking at Thomas Vinterberg's 2020 Academy Award-winning Druk, aka Another Round. Druk won the Best Foreign Language Film Oscar, and Vinterberg was also nominated for Best Director, which is cool to see since so often foreign language film directors get overlooked for inclusion in other categories. I would have liked to have seen Mads get a Best Lead Actor nomination, and the film overall getting a Best Picture nomination, but hey, I'll take what I can get when it comes to foreign language film representation at the Oscars. I still think it's ludicrous that Mads has never even been nominated at the Oscars. Overlooking his performance in The Hunt is one of the biggest Oscar snubs ever, in my eyes. Another Round is a bit of a reteam from The Hunt, actually, as both star Mads Mikkelsen were both directed by Thomas Vinterberg and were both co-written by Vinterberg and Tobias Lindholm. This time around, instead of following a single central performance, Another Round follows an ensemble cast consisting of Mads Mikkelsen, Lars Reinth, Magnus Malang, and Thomas Bo Larsen, who you might recognize as the father of the girl who accuses Mads in The Hunt. Lars Reinth was also in The Hunt, though in a less prominent role. These 4 are all high school teachers who have an idea to run a scientific and social experiment on themselves and document the results. So, what is their hypothesis? that being a little bit drunk all the time is the better and perhaps biologically appropriate way to live. That premise sounds like it could make for an extremely goofy movie.
An extremely goofy movie. Shredding onto video.
But the concept is actually played surprisingly straight. Another Round is categorized as a comedy drama, but you should know going into it that it isn't some happy-go-lucky, laugh-out-loud joke fest. It's thoroughly grounded in reality, and even though it is definitely both fun and funny in parts, it's also far heavier and more somber overall, especially when compared to other comedies. Be sure to calibrate your expectations appropriately when going into the film. If you're expecting some joke-a-minute laugh fest, you're liable to get tonal whiplash, and you might not enjoy yourself. But going with the right expectations in Another Round will prove itself to be an excellent film. Each of these four essential characters feels fully dimensionalized and real. We learn the perfect amount about each man for their place in the story, and all four of these performances are seriously impressive, not just Mads, though he does steal the spotlight in his big scenes as one would expect. So much of why the film works as well as it does is the chemistry between these characters. If you didn't buy their friendship and their dynamics, the entire film would crumble around them. Luckily, that is not the case. One thing I greatly appreciated about Another Round is that it never feels preachy in its message, which the premise certainly had the possibility of doing. You might hear that premise and expect the film to be something akin to an anti-alcohol PSA that shows how drinking destroys lives and whatnot. But even though the drinking does lead to a lot of damage, the film doesn't paint anything in black and white. There's an extremely believable escalation of both drinking and the ramifications of said drinking. For much of the film, it honestly seems more like an advertisement for alcohol rather than a PSA against it. These guys are all having the times of their lives, and everything is better for them at home, at work, all throughout their daily activities when they're a little bit tipsy.
Tipsy's the best thing you can be in life.
This is where the film finds most of its comedy outside of the heavier moments, and it's great fun. There's a lot of dancing in the film from everyone except for Mads, and they point this out repeatedly. It's constant setup for an eventual payoff, but it's actually set up so many times and reiterated so many times that it builds just Himalayan expectations for the eventual payoff of Mads dancing. And I worried the film wouldn't be able to deliver on the caliber of payoff that all of this setup demanded. But the film absolutely delivers, and Mads' big dance number is not just the highlight of the film, but it's easily one of the overall highlights of 2020's entire cinematic output. This is a great film that I can recommend to anyone who goes in with the right mindset. Don't go in looking for a fast-paced comedy. Instead, go in looking for a somber and slow-moving drama that has a great sense of fun tethered entirely to the emotional and mental state of its ensemble cast of characters. Make sure you subscribe to Brickwall Pictures and check back in for part 2 of Mads Mikkelsen Week coming out in just a couple of days. Next time we're looking at Anders Thomas Jensen's Men and Chicken from 2015. See you there.